August, I've always had this feeling. I've spoken to Americans, Europeans, by Americans, I mean North Americans, South Americans alike. Do you agree with the following statement that in the US, the entrepreneur tends to have, or maybe the culture promotes that kind of hustle, that spirit of entrepreneurship and kind of daring and risk taker that you may not be able to find all through Europe?
Now, what I've noticed is that we pitched at Food Bites last time. And before I went to the US, I pitched in Holland for 6 people. And they thought our solution was pretty okay. And that was it. And when I pitched at Food Bites, and it's not in my native language, and I walked back, and everyone that I saw gave me a hand, tapped on my shoulder, and gave me positive feedback, a great solution, man, we want to talk to you, give me your business card. It's such an enormous vibe that they give you on you're in a good way and keep on going, instead of, but did you think of that problem or did you think of that problem? In the US, there are problems, but these problems can always be solved. In Europe, there are no problems, but they will always find a problem.
So it's the problem solving, because entrepreneurship is about solving problems, and US still has that entrepreneurial spirit no matter what anyone says.
Yeah, it's great. And I really think that every European company has to done one pitch in the US, because if you've done that, you know for sure that you don't want to work for that you want to be an entrepreneur, That's where you want to be. That's the vibe. That's the spirit that you want to have, which you cannot have at this moment in Europe.
That's right. Well, this is episode number 58.
Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast, connecting the opaque world of food startups.
Today, episode number 58. We are going all the way to Holland. He's a Dutchman who has quite a bit of experience. He started his first business in his second year of school. It was an e-commerce site for mobile phone accessories. He sold the company. Then he started with some B2B telecom sales and then Bluetooth marketing, which was a bump in the road for him. In 2010, he became a Dutch app builder for both Android and Apple. And in 2013, he started what we're going to talk about today, No Food Wasted, which is a service that alerts you of any food that is going to be dead, right? So not just produce, but things with an expiration date where people can get alerted to their neighborhood grocery and buy these products at a discount and prevent food from being wasted. August de Vocht, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for calling and the interest in our solution.
Yeah, I know. I'm quite curious. Today, I want to cover quite a few things. First off, you came down to the U.S., I guess just a week or 2 weeks ago. You were filming a documentary.
Yeah, we did a pitch at Food Bites in San Francisco, and we wanted to make a documentary about it because there are not so many Dutch people who are going to the US to do a pitch, and we want to show how it is when you have not any money or less money, and you are seeking for money in the US. So what are the differences between Holland and the US concerning the investment climate?
How did your pitch go?
It went very well. There were 10 companies who were pitching. 9 of them were US. 1 of them was Europe. That was us. There were 9 people who already had an investment and 1 without an investment. That was us. And we became second with 18% of the votes. So second is the first of the losers, but hey, we are happy with it. So it went quite well, and we had a lot of interesting people who are interested in our solution now. And we are still in touch with them. So maybe we're going to make the jump to the US, or maybe we're going to get an investment to make a rollout in Europe. We don't, at this moment, everything is possible.
Right now, you guys are just in Holland?
Yeah, we're just in Holland. We are testing it with 25 supermarkets around my hometown in the southern of Holland. And we are finalizing the test to go national, and from there on to roll out in Europe.
In the US, I've noticed things like ecological packaging are not very important to end consumers. They'll say in a survey that they care about ecological packaging. And I've talked to some top tea brands in San Francisco, and they've all confirmed this with me. People will say they care about ecological packaging in a focus group, but when it comes to buying at the supermarket and the ecological packaging is an extra 25 cents per unit, they'll buy the cheaper one. I wonder, spending time in the U.S., do you notice any differences in terms of sophistication in the U.S. and Dutch market?
And, everything in the U.S. is a little bit bigger than over here. So that was not a big surprise, but we also asked people what they thought about food waste. And if you ask it here, for example, in Holland, then you get the reaction that everybody thinks it's bad, but they also want to do something about it. And it's the same with the US. They say it's bad, but the solution is not with them, but with somebody else or with some other company. And if you look at the packages, for example, of course they're bigger, but that's also the complaint of the clients that we talk to. They were also saying the packages are too big. The portions are too big. They're offering us too big portions, but there's nobody who's saying I can do something about it. It's all the problem of the producers or the distributors, not their problem.
So no food wastage has a huge element of the consumer, and that's where the consumer kind of has to take responsibility, say, I'm part of the problem. I waste food.
No, it's together with the supermarket. The supermarket and the consumer has to team up. That's the idea. And the consumer can help the supermarket with reducing food waste, and the supermarket can help the consumer to reduce food waste and have a better price for their products.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying, August. So it's not just on the onus is not just on the food companies and the supermarket, the consumer as well. Yeah,
we all have to do it together. It's a problem of the whole chain. That's how I see it, and the whole chain has to work on a solution. And we will provide the solution. And if they use this, then they can reduce food waste with up to 18%. Let me be clear on that, which is a huge number on food waste.
Right on. And so you guys started this in 2013. Now, I want to wind back. You're 38 now. You have a family. I guess the app part is pretty obvious in 2010. Do you still have, it's called Jamoro Mobile Media?
Yeah, we still got it. But I'm focusing now more on no food wasted because Jamoro, it works. And we got good people who can do the job there. I had the idea of no food waste in 2013, and we started developing then, and we went live on September 2014. But my focus is no food wasted at the moment.
No food wasted. And a question for you. We talked about the consumers in the U.S. Did you get any feedback from any grocery stores on how receptive are they to talk about when their food's going on discount?
No. I wanted to meet up with some chains, but there was no possibility to talk to them. So I went to some supermarkets and to look if they are reducing price when a product is at the end of the life cycle in the supermarket. And I noticed there were 50% off stickers at Safeway, but I couldn't get any information from the people who are working there because every time when you talk about food waste, it's like there's a bad vibe around it, and they don't want to talk. Even without the camera, they didn't want to talk about how they reduce food waste.
It's kind of a taboo subject, huh?
Yeah, it was really, really strange because here in Holland they are very open about it. Okay, we do this, we do that, or we throw it away, or we give it away, or we don't care. It's out in the open. But with you guys, it was a little bit difficult for me to get the feedback from the supermarkets.
Did you notice anything that's I guess you could talk about ingredients or any other things, especially like imported packaging, anything that's legal in the U.S. in terms of food that's illegal in Holland?
No, I'm not an expert in that, so I really couldn't give you a good example. The only thing that I heard, because I was there a whole week with the AgTech conference, and I heard a lot of non-GMO, but I don't know too much about the ingredients. We are just focusing on reducing food waste based on the best before date. And if it's biological or if it's not biological, it's for us not so important. So that's why we don't look at the ingredients.
Gotcha. No, and I guess one of the reasons I asked was because the way I understood working, my business partner exports a lot to Holland, and he had to change the packaging on his organic products and make it eco packaging because it wasn't going to be allowed. And U.S. has no such rules about ecological packaging, but I wasn't exactly sure what the rule was.
Yeah, I'm also not sure of what the rule is. So, and when I'm not sure, I can guess, but let me try to give you the facts instead of what I'm guessing.
Yeah, no worries. No, cool. I'm just still trying to get a handle on this. So you have stats for the amount of food that's wasted per year in Holland. I'm not expecting you to have this stat off the top of your head, but it would be interesting. Like, I would think if I was pitching to the US, and maybe you did this, I would think the percentage of food, just based on our culture, that the percentage of food wasted in the US might even be higher than the percentage of food wasted in Holland, based on our consumption habits.
No, if you compare it to the whole of Europe and to the whole of US, then in Europe you're wasting 40%. That are the officials. In the US you're wasting 40%. That are the official figures. While the experts are saying it's 50%, but those figures you cannot find, so it's not official. But in Europe, we are wasting 47% of the waste of the food. So we are wasting.
Wow, so it's still really high.
Yeah, it's still really high, and that's what consumers and supermarkets waste. If you look, for example, in Holland, then we're wasting 4 billion euros on food by supermarkets, the whole chain, consumers, supermarkets, etc., etc. Only 10% of the 4 billion is done by supermarkets. So only 400 million euros is wasted by supermarkets. So it's just a little. And the most is wasted by consumers at home. And it's the same for the US. But if you look at the US, like I say, it's 40%. And in dollars, it's over $160 billion a year that you waste by retail and consumers.
Right on. The stats are just astronomical. You know, I talked about Hungry Harvest, who was on the podcast, and just 6 billion pounds of fresh produce in the U.S. per year that doesn't even make it to the grocery store. So the waste is just incredible. A theme of a lot of the guests, I know you met them at Food Bites, is kind of turning waste, utilizing waste, right? Mike from Coragen is creating biochar, back to the roots, using coffee waste to make mushrooms, right? Yeah. And today's podcast listeners can be found at foodstartupspodcast.com/nofoodwasted. This theme is really important because all the opportunity is here. It's solving a problem, a huge world problem. And there's also a huge, not just what it does for the environment and potentially on helping save hunger. I know it's a little bit difficult to calculate these types of things, but it's amazing to finding a market in something that people are going to throw away. Sometimes you can get great margins. This is something where selling grocery stores, I think it's interesting because these are things that they're going to have to throw away anyway.
Yeah, and if you notice that a supermarket has a margin of 2 to 3%, and they also have a waste of 2 to 3%. So it's, for example, in Europe, here in Holland, they throw away for 2,500 euros a week. Every euro that they save is a euro of their profit. So it's very commercially interesting to work with the solution and to reduce food waste. Not only for the environment, but also for the consumer because they have cheaper food, and for the supermarket because they have a higher profit.
You had your trip to the US. What's your gut feel? Do you think next year you guys could be live in the US with the No Food Wasted app?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm a little bit in a struggle with myself there because I really get some good feedback at Food Bites. Really positive people like investors and consumers. But when I talk to people on the street, I'm not sure that they're ready to reduce food waste because I just don't think they're ready for it at this moment. The market is not so big and so ready as it is here in Europe. The government in Europe is putting more effort to tell people about food waste and to reduce food waste than in the US. And I heard some people saying in the US that one, it's their right to reduce food waste, which I think is a little bit over the top. The other thing is that people told me that a lot of young guys or young girls can't cook anymore because they buy everything prepared prepackaged and just put it in the microwave. So I'm not sure. I'm talking with US people at this moment, some investors and some not. how we can launch or if we can launch our solution there. But first, we need a supermarket to do that with. And there are some great examples of people of supermarkets who can partner with us, especially in the San Francisco region. But yeah, like I said, I'm not sure at this moment. It's my first feeling was we don't have to go to the US because they're not ready. And now it's like 50-50.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point here. We've had a guest, we had a packaging expert and brand expert that worked with Innocent Drinks in England.
Okay.
And she said the same thing. What people say in focus groups is they kind of talk about their ideal self. So it's like people say, oh, yeah, I love to eat organic. I love not to waste. I believe in equality. I work out. I'm a healthy person. I'm a fair person, right? Because you're kind of trying to talk about your ideal self. So the fact that you went and met people in the street and read their reactions, because sometimes investors on a high level, you've been to San Francisco. I'm sure it's the same way in Holland. Most startups fail. It's only 1 out of 20, 1 out of 10. And a lot of times they base it on what they think the public should want to do, but not what they actually will do.
No, and that's the big difference also here in Holland with the US or in Europe with the US. And even in Europe, we have differences because in for example, Germany, the government is less focusing on food waste than, for example, in Holland or England. So it's maybe there in all the different states in the US, there are also some differences. But yeah, like I said, I don't think that the average American is ready to start reducing food waste. And I hope that I'm wrong, but somebody has to convince me then.
Now, August, I want to ask you a question here. I really want to touch on Europe because we don't have so many guests on from Europe. I would take a stab here. I would think maybe Holland's got to be up there. I would think all of the Scandinavian countries. Is there a clear leader in terms of countries that are doing something about food waste in Europe?
No, I don't know if there's a leader. I know Holland is very, very big on it. There was a conference the week before I went to the US, like 3 weeks ago, I think. No food to waste. And there were all our African and European countries and organizations on how to reduce food waste. And they said they want to reduce food waste with 20% within a few years. So which is a huge number. But to say that there's one country who's the leader, it's difficult. For example, in France, you have now the law that no supermarket can waste food anymore. No supermarket is allowed to waste food. They have to give it away, give it to food banks, or sell it, which is, of course, in theoretical, it's a perfect law, but yeah, for supermarkets, it's really hard to deal with. In Holland, they are focusing a lot on education of consumers. You don't throw food away, or you make foods from leftovers, or etc., etc. In England, you have, for example, Tesco, who's doing a lot with their supermarket. So in every country, there is something going on. There's no big leader that you could say, okay, if you follow them, then you're in the right direction.
So it's interesting, this whole France-Holland comparison. France is like, let's just use laws. Use laws and enforce it and then kind of make it happen by accident. And Holland seems more focused on let's educate people so they have the internal drive to start saving food. And that sounds like a better answer to me, just because, at least from my experience in the US, witnessing like with environmental protection, they make these laws, but then companies just spend millions of dollars with lawyers finding ways to get around it, and the public doesn't really understand.
If you look to our partners, we have some partners here in Holland who have international context. They also think that the law in France will not make it very long because it's too difficult for supermarkets to work with, and the supermarkets are too big there to let this happen. And what you say, they will give a lawyer some time and some money to solve this problem for them. And our big advantage here in Holland is what you say is the education that the government is doing to the consumers. Everybody here in Holland knows that food waste is not good, but that's a good thing in the US. Everybody in the US also knows that food waste is not good, but because of the education, they are also willing to do something about it themselves. And that's the big difference at this moment with a lot of people in the US.
August, I'm talking to you on a Friday, and it's 4th of July weekend here when we're recording, but I don't think it's a holiday in Holland, and you're like, I'm going to be working this weekend. I mean, as an entrepreneur, what are the biggest points of stress? What's your schedule like?
My schedule or my biggest point of stress? Because there are two different things for me.
Two different questions. Let's do both.
My biggest point of stress is, of course, money. At this moment, we are finalizing our first investment round. And do we get it or do we not get it? That's the difficult thing. And especially the environment of investing is very different with US than in Holland. But that's another topic. But money is a big issue. You know, we got the solution. We know that it works. We know that people are very like our product, but we need the money to make it happen in Europe. So that's one thing. My schedule is like different every day, but there's a lot of talking with supermarkets, talking with consumers, working on the development of the solution, working on new items. For example, we have made the application to work on an iPhone or an Android phone, but we also made a narrowcasting screen. And I don't know if you know what it is, but it's that you can see the best before date products, which are in our app, on a TV screen at the supermarket. So it's in-store marketing. We also connected beacons to our system. So when you are near a shelf, you get an extra comment on your phone that there is a best before date promotion. All those things we have to develop and we have to think. Further talking with the investors. And some days like this, we have 2-3 interviews for media, which is very, very nice that we get the interest for a solution. But everything is food waste and supermarkets. That's the main thing that I'm working on.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Listeners, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can go to our website, www.nofoodwasted.com. It's in English, and please leave a remark there if you want, or just go to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/nofoodwasted, or twitter.com/NFDWSTT, because there is already somebody in the US who has the name No Food Wasted on Twitter. So we had to do something different there.
And that's just No Food Wasted without the vowels.
Yeah. That was the most easiest for us to do. And if somebody is listening who is the owner of the Twitter account No Food Wasted, please contact us because we would like to talk to you.
All right. The Twitter account, are they using it or are they just sitting? Like we call it squatting. Are they just...
Yeah, they're squatting.
They're squatting.
We tried to contact them a few months ago. I'm not sure, but a while ago, and no reaction. And
let me tell you something, August. I have a buddy who has, he was actually on the podcast. He wrote about it online, so I can share the story. Tynan, Tynan. And he was trying to get Tynan on Twitter, and someone was squatting on it for so long. But they actually do make exceptions. What he did, he went to Twitter and made them like a huge cake, and he dropped it off at their office in San Francisco. And after that, they gave him his Tynan Twitter account.
I should have done that last week.
Yeah. I mean, priorities, man. But I think Twitter's actually, they're a really cool company. Especially once you get launched, and if you tell them, like, this is what we're doing, like, it's not like No Food Wasted has a purpose that can serve the greater good. So if you reach out to them when you launch in the US, maybe they'll give it to you. And I'd consider doing that.
Yeah, that's a good tip for next time when I'm flying out there, because I'm definitely going back. And it's a good tip to do that.
Well, cool, August. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time and your interest and in our solution. And we hope that we can launch our solution also in the US. Would be great.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.